This video is brought to you by the historic Blacksmith Conservancy, dedicated to the collection, preservation, and advancement of historically significant blacksmiths and their practice. I think the time has come to get serious about this gate project. There's going to be a whole lot of holes to punch. I think I counted 26 separate punched, upset, and drifted holes in this. There's some that are 1/2 inch square. Some of them I think are going to be 3/8 round. And two at the bottom for the bottom bar is going to get a 1/2 by 1 inch tenon. So it's going to be a nice big tenon with a heel on it that will really help keep the gate from racking. And I think that's where I'm going to start. And that's on these two long bars here. And right now I've got these cut extra long to make sure I've got enough room and some stuff to work with. But this is going to start at one end. I would like to do most of this in the induction forge. That gives you a real nice isolated heat, and I think it's ideal for this kind of work. But trying to wrestle these long, heavy bars through the coil is a good way to kind of snag and put some leverage on the coil, and you'll kink it and you ruin the coil. Got to make a new coil or buy a new coil. So I think for these bars, I'm going to do this with a torch, and that way it'll be a little bit safer. And I'll be able to just rest it on some stands while I work with a torch. So I think that's going to be the way to go. I'm going to go back and forth between both bars, so I'll punch corresponding holes. One bar gets a total of 4 holes, the other one will get 5 holes, and I'll talk about why 5 holes when we get to that point. The torch is kind of slow going, but it does do the job, and it's fairly precise. So I think it's the right tool in this circumstance. The bar does need to be brought back to the anvil between upsetting passes and make sure that it's staying straight. If you get a bad kink in this, it's going to be really hard to fix it later. Well, it'd be more efficient to go ahead and punch the hole in this bar while I'm working on it and get this one completely done. I want to make sure these upsets end up the same, so I'm going to go ahead and do the upset on the second bar so that they match, and then I'll punch both holes. When we did the sample pieces, I punched the holes by hand at the anvil. That's a very reliable way to go. It's slow, you can take your time, make sure you're punching straight and getting everything lined up. But it does take a lot more time when you have several dozen holes to punch. For this hole, I'm punching at the treadle hammer, and it's going a lot faster, but it still allows the precision since it's a single blow tool. On the other bar, I actually tried to punch under the power hammer, and there was a little bit of bounce in the punch, and I got some double strikes where I didn't want it. And I have a lot of cleanup to do on that to find out if I'm going to be able to salvage that bar. I might have to throw it out and start all over again, but if I can clean it up with a die grinder and a file, I will. You can also punch under a hydraulic press, but I get a lot of punch suck in when I'm trying to punch under the hydraulic press, and I would just as soon avoid that if I can. I'd like to take a moment and thank the sponsor of today's video, the historic Blacksmith Conservancy. The historic Blacksmith Conservancy will develop and implement programming to promote traditional blacksmithing to the general public, metalworker, and the building trades in line with our mission. The Historic Blacksmith Conservancy will establish educational programming to train intermediate level smiths in advanced techniques required to execute master level works. When I started blacksmithing many years ago, people thought of blacksmithing as a dying art. A lot of people still think it's a dying art, but it really isn't. There's more interest in blacksmithing today than there has been in many years, and there are more suppliers and resources out there for people like you who want to get into blacksmithing. But the thing that I feel is missing in so much of this is the more advanced work. It's that thing that takes you from making simple items on the weekends in your shop to really doing your best work. And that's where I'm trying to go as a blacksmith. So I am super excited to see an organization like the Historic Blacksmith Conservancy promoting that higher level of work, promoting the advanced work. I will leave a link down in the video description so you can check out their website, and that's where you'll find information on supporting the Historic Blacksmith Conservancy. Working at the ends of the bars, I can use the weight of the bar to upset it. However, working in the center of the bar, the area where I need to grab it to upset against a block on the ground, is pretty much right where I need to heat it and punch the hole. So I'm going to try working on this horizontally on the platen table and see if I can upset them this way. It may also help me keep the bars straighter to work them on a flat surface like this. Usually I was using a propane torch, but it takes way longer to heat and does not get quite as hot as the acetylene torch does. So I'm using the largest rosebud I have for the acetylene torch. This seems to heat several times faster, and I get a little bit higher heat, and all that should make the upsetting go faster and easier. Punching these holes starts to get pretty redundant. It's the same set of steps repeated multiple times. I am getting a little bit better at it, getting more efficient. The upsets are going a little faster and the holes are coming out nice and clean and centered in the bar, which I'm really thrilled about. But I am making sure that I take my time and I get these things just the way I want them. This is too big a project to be in a rush on. So I'm spreading this out over several days. I do a couple of holes, I take a break, come back when the bar is cool, straighten the bar. Even the cold sections of the bar kind of warp and twist a little bit as you're doing the upsets and punching the holes. So I want to make sure I keep those straight. And after each hole is done in both bars, I then measure to the next hole. I'm losing about a 1/4 inch of bar length on each side of the hole, and I'm working from one end, so that's all kind of going to one end. And I just account for that 1/4 inch when I lay out the hole. So I lay it out a 1/4 inch further down the bar than I want it in the long run. Then after all the upsetting and the punching, it ends up pretty much where I want it. If it's a little bit short, maybe I need to draw out the bar between the last two holes just to get it where I want it, or maybe I need to upset it a little bit more if the hole ends up a little too far. It's just part of the process of getting everything exactly the way you want it. Ideally, they always come out in the same place, but realistically, they might be a 1/16 or an 1/8 inch off, so it's worth making those little adjustments. Just remember that hot steel stretches, and the more you have hot, the longer that's going to expand and stretch. So you need to make sure the bars are cool when you do your final checking of measurements and make sure everything's right where you want it. These bars get a bottom rail, 2 middle rails, and a top rail. But one bar is going to get a 5th hole in it, and that's going to be for the bolt of the lock. Now, I haven't punched that hole yet, but the process looks exactly like punching the other holes. So instead of making you watch hole after hole after hole being punched, I'm just going to go ahead and get back to work on this, call this a video at this point. For the next video on this project, I should have all of these holes punched and be ready to start doing those long, tight scrolls at the tops of these bars. Once again, I would like to thank the historic Blacksmith Conservancy for sponsoring today's video, and I would like to thank each and every one of you for giving up your time to watch the video. I really appreciate it. In the meantime, I hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next video.